Hello everyone and welcome to our circle Anne Salve Women. For today I'm going to be discussing my article on tilling the soil for good harvest. And it's funny because for me all my life I have been given help, and you don't realize all the many things that people do for you, the seeds that they planted in you, until you're much older and you look back and go, wow, I am so grateful for having run into that person, or having that person even just for a brief moment be a part of my life, because I am today partially and sometimes mainly because of that person who planted or sowed that seed in me. And so I think to myself, you give without hopes to really judge it, because it's difficult sometimes when you are helping and then you start to think to yourself, is this person going to actually give something of themselves to reciprocate what has just been given? You give people something in hopes that then they will just pass on that baton, but you try and tell yourself, don't do that. Don't give thinking that that is what you anticipate to happen, or that that's the reason for why you do what you do. You give because you give. And I learned that from others very early in life. And one of the places that I learned was, I remember sitting on Santa's lap, and I mentioned this in my article. It was, I was outside and I had seen someone walk out of a building, and it very small across the street building. And it was interesting because I had seen them have something, and they had said to me, oh, they're giving out gifts at this place. And I was thinking, well, wow, what? They give it for free. And perhaps that selfish or that greed came upon me as a young child, and I thought I should get a gift too, or maybe I could get a gift too. And I knew that it was just better for me to go right in there and do what I had to really do to sit on Santa's lap. And that's what I learned. You sit on Santa's lap, you get a gift, and there you are. And so I really thought that through, and with just thinking that through, I went in, sat on Santa's lap, and told him what I wanted. And I can tell you it was not a doll, because I was not a doll kind of person. And then I got this doll, and I was thinking, wow, that was nice. And I probably never played with the doll, but when I think back, I realized it was that moment of giving. Just like recalling where Mr. Skidmore, my sixth grade teacher, had actually taken me to the spelling bee, taken the time and taken the energy, driving me to the competitions. It just really planted that seed in me of the desire to win, the desire to compete, the desire to challenge myself to higher levels. And that is what that doll did for me. Not because I played with a doll, but it gave me the message that no one had to know my name. The person who perhaps donated it, or was there, maybe watching from a distance, was happy to see that I had gotten something, and yet never said, hey, that was me that gave it to you. And as I grew older, that has been truly my joy. That supposedly, I guess, without offense to anyone, playing that Secret Santa at times where you just know the joys from within. And I just remember watching that movie by Russell Crowe. I believe it was called Poker Face. And he had stated something in his will when they read his will at the very end, somewhat to the end of the movie, where, you really hope that what you give will then eventually get to the people who truly need it. And that's where my heart is always telling me. It's like, what? It may not seem like it's getting to the person who needs it, but maybe it doesn't have to be the monetary part, right? It could just be that the good spirit, that then someone was happy to have gotten something, and then they spread that love, they spread that kindness, or they spread that just a hello, a smile to someone else that needed it. And that's how I look at it, about reciprocating this type of need that we have in society, in our communities, and just truly our nation and our world, of spreading that type of positivity throughout. And it doesn't always have to start with a lot. It could just be something simple as a generic Barbie doll. And, even though you're never going to play with it, it was a thought that counts. And so I have really come to understand that. And the books that I have read, I still remember my child receiving from my paternal cousin of Milo and the Magical Stones. And I remember that, and I still have this book, still read it to my younger children. And it's amazing because the little things that, the messages that you get from a book, so positive in light, and making you realize that even something so small as a message could be so big. And it was, they got these like really shiny stones that they found in the crevices of where they lived. And there were two endings. You could either have a happy ending or a sad ending. And whichever one you chose really had a message to it. And of course, the sad ending was when you became gluttonous, when you became greedy, when you just kept taking, then their mountain or their molehill collapsed in all of them. But perhaps two people had ended up surviving. And whereas the happy ending was everyone returned something back to the crevice of wherever they got a shiny stone. And it was like they were able to continue that for many years to follow and enjoy all of these shiny stones and the warmth and the joy that it gave their community. And that message was, just like what Derek Jeter had said. I perused through an article many, over a decade ago, perhaps, when this was written about him. But he had said something about you give a little, you have a little, you give a little. And, I was really touched by that because my thought is, I don't know where he had gotten that saying. Perhaps it came from his heart and that was what was quoted, or he was taught that as a young child. But we've all somehow been planted something good in us that now we're able to spread to other people. And I always think to myself that whatever it is that you are then able to pick up from the world, when it is positive, when it is something that's shining, when it is something that's bright, when it is something that's warm, it's joyful, it is something that you really carry on, and it gives you that strength to go, I can do that, and I can do it probably even better, and no one needs to know, and that's the beauty of it. Is sometimes we think when we do something just beyond what anyone else would have thought was generous, you want the world to know. And I always think to myself, that's not what we're supposed to really do. It's supposed to be this intrinsic reward where you go, I did that and no one else needed to know, and it felt good. And yes, sometimes you kind of want people to know, and the more you want to hold it in and go, no, that's not the purpose. Because as soon as you let people know, then something tells you inside, you know what, all of a sudden you don't feel as rich, you don't feel as glorified, you don't feel as worthy of having that blessing to have been able to share. And I realize that perhaps, when we do donate, when we do give and no one knows about it, it's that secret self. It's that part that says, I did that and I didn't even have to share with anyone, and here's this family or here's this person smiling and coming back to you acting as if, or telling you the things that they received, and they don't even know that you had something to do with that. And that's that great feeling, and I always think to myself, that is sowing the seed, and you're propagating, because you're thinking, if you do that, guess what? That person is then going to remember those moments, because I know I did. And they're going to go, oh my goodness, I'm going to be able to give now, and let me give. And who cares if it's $1, right? I remember, and I know I didn't write this in my article, but my heart tore apart when my husband and I first took our very first cruise. We ended up in this other country, and I didn't have any candy, and I should have known, but I didn't want to take anything. I'm not much of a carrying a whole bunch of stuff with me. I wanted to be light in our travels, and when we stepped off and was able to walk around and just, I think at that time we were going to go ride some horses or so, and I remember walking, and there were these two children out there that were selling things. They must have been like 5 or so, and I remember that, and I'm so grateful for having grown up in a native country where I remember people, at that age that were out in the streets also selling, and just beautiful young children. And I didn't have anything. I truly thought to myself, I should have had some candy. I should have something. And all of a sudden, I just dug, just very, very quietly to myself. And I found a quarter. And I remember sharing this with my students, because I remember giving that only quarter that I had. Like I said, I don't care much. And I gave the quarter to one of this beautiful young lady. And again, she must have been like 5 or so. And I kid you not, the way I expressed it to my students, and I believe I expressed it to my older children too, is that you would thought that you gave her donated blood to her, and she was like just that priceless moment of seeing what I gave. And I remember her staring at it. And you know what was so amazing is then her friend had walked over. I think they were selling sunglasses or so, or bracelets or something like that. But the young girl was just staring at it with this big smile. You couldn't have bought that smile. And the other friend walked over and stared, and I thought, wow, now I should have had 2 quarters. So bummed that I didn't have 2 quarters, or I didn't have anything else, because I dug deep. I trust me, I dug deep. And the other person, what made me admire the other friend even more, both of them at the same time, is the other one could have said, I want it, and fought for it, whatever greed that they might have had in their system. And it showed me that this person showed me that they didn't, because all they did was smile along with the friend, and they smiled together. And to me, it was like, I told my students, how many of you ever been given a quarter and you act like, what? Is all you get is a quarter? And that to me was that moment where I wish I had the world to really give to those 2 children, because, when you have moments like that, where you can give a kid this genuine smile and give them this like joy that you can't buy. And that was the moment where I wish I had everything in my bag, like Mary Poppins, just pulling out stuff to give. And I realized that was all that was meant to be given, because then to me it was that message to me. It's like, it was back to that generic Barbie doll. It's like, sometimes we're grateful for just what we've gotten. And I'm sure that it was more than how I felt when I got the generic Barbie doll. Because again, I wasn't a doll type of person. When I gave it to that little girl, and again, I didn't mention this in my article because my heart just speaks. It's amazing how all of a sudden you feel just so worthy of life, because you gave it to someone else. That moment of joy, that moment of sharing this goodness that you didn't even think was worth much, and because they smiled with such a priceless smile on the face, then you knew you did something. There was that moment of redemption in me that said, yeah, you didn't do too bad. And so no one is perfect. We know that we're quick to judge when we're giving and someone seems a little bit wanting more than what they really should have gotten. But I am taught that really it's not about that. It's just planting seeds and hoping to really spread that idea that you too can give. It doesn't have to be a lot. Just have a little, give a little. And then when you do, you just hope that eventually it'll get to the people who truly need it. But regardless, give from your heart and enjoy knowing that there will be someone out there who is joyful because of your goodness. And it may not be right away, but it'll sink in. Just like that generic Barbie like sunk in with me. And then all of a sudden it was like the joy of giving became a part of me. And you can be selective. You don't have to be every day. I know I've failed many times where I've walked past people I should have given to and my heart told me I should have, and I didn't. But that's your guilt, to not have to share with anyone. And then you make up for it, right? Quietly to yourself. And I don't know about you, but it still haunts you. Doesn't matter how many times you've given to someone else. When you know you should have given to another person and you didn't, that face, those eyes will haunt you. And that's okay, because we're all human. And the message I have really today is just tilling the soil for good harvest and being the best you can in the way you know how. And give yourself permission when you didn't do it too well. But just keep trying. In the words of my mother, God bless us all. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for just really taking anything I say in a positive light without judgment. It's okay if you judge. We all do. But, at the same time, let's hope that you get the message that to give is something without judgment. It's just planting goodness in this world. And imagine if we just gave a little, how much all that little we will become big. Have a great day, everyone, and thank you again for listening. God bless us all.